Steve, how did you decide to become a therapist?
I didn't decide to become a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
I fell into it. Um, I used to build racing cars for a living. I'm an engineer by first profession. And back in the 1980s, decided to do a degree in psychology to help me teach the drivers to drive the cars better. I got more interested in psychology than I did in engineering. And eventually I transferred over. But when I began my full-time training, I became very depressed and anxious. Didn't really understand what was wrong with me, and I was learning about the subject.
Mm-hmm.
So I started out. I wanted to do a clinical psychology course. I couldn't afford to do it because I had to pay for it myself. So I became a mental health nurse instead, and probably a big mistake in retrospect. I probably should have gone for the clin psych qualification, but having said that, it's led me to some very interesting places. One of which was during my brief period in the National Health Service in the UK, I worked in a forensic setting, and they were just beginning to talk about CBT,
Mm-hmm.
which was my original therapy qualification.
Yeah.
And
And when was this?
back in 1994,
Yeah.
so that's 20 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually I trained in it. I became accredited in it with the BABCP. And then for a very brief period of time, I worked in the NHS, only 2 years. And then I had a very nasty accident, which I won't go into. Well, it was an assault at work, basically. But I then set up my own business doing occupational health, working in private industry, working in commercial companies, increasingly doing insurance work and things like that. Then I got involved with Eli Lilly, the drug company. They paid for me to do a 6-month project in Liverpool. And in that 6-month project, we set up and ran a clinic in 1998 that was very similar to the Improving Access to Psychological Therapies project that you now see going on in the UK. We learned a great deal from that and realized that what we were doing wasn't going to work. We tried to talk to various people about it, but they weren't interested. That took 2 years for the whole thing to run through.
So what was that? Why didn't it work? What was the problem?
Well, the problem was that, first of all, there was the demand for assessment, the demand for a set number of sessions, the medical DSM-4 basis.
Mm-hmm.
None of those things really worked in the practice.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the doctors all demanded this medical model,
Mm-hmm.
particularly the psychiatrists. And eventually it became just a bit of a nonsense, which is why it came to an end.
Mm-hmm.
It was working extremely well because we'd scrapped most of the traditional medical model. But the medics didn't like it because we'd scrapped all of that. They felt that they didn't have any part to play in it, which was absolutely correct. So it all came to an end. We wrote to the Department of Health in the UK about it. They weren't interested. Went to our MPs. They weren't interested. So the project, after 2 years, came to an end. And that left me with no job, living in Liverpool. So I set up my own practice, this time still as a cognitive behavior therapist. And I continued doing that and increasing my practice. I started employing people, doing an awful lot of insurance work, clinics for private hospitals, things of that nature.